Okay, our live stream is up.
Okay, thanks. So I want to call the meeting to order for the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Thursday, October 31st. My clock says it's 2:32. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. Do we have any additions or deletions to be made to the agenda?
I asked Lauren if I could just tag on to miscellaneous, something about the St. Catharines Arts Awards. Very short. At the very end. And you said fine, right?
Oh, yes, for sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So add just item about the Arts Awards to miscellaneous. Just to update you, Adrian has deferred discussion of the Global Salmon Way to next month, just because he didn't get a chance to do his presentation on it to the Public Art Committee. So we're going to wait until they've had their discussion. The item on 77 Dalhousie Avenue has been moved up. We're going to move that up to Adrian's spot, to the Global Salmon Way. And that is it for changes. Oh, yes. And we'll be adding a discussion of the recent fire at 164 King Street as item 7.5.
Okay, so I guess we need a motion to approve the amended agenda then.
Happy to.
Mr. Robert Speck, thank you. And all in favor?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Excuse me, I seem to have lost the video component of the Zoom meeting. I'm not even sure you can still hear me. It's
We
Maria.
can hear you.
We can hear you. Yeah.
What I see on my screen is a City of St. Catharines document saying St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee meeting, today's date.
That's me streaming my screen.
I'm sorry to ask at the start of the meeting, how do I get back to the Zoom visual?
I'm not sure. I think there's a setting on your screen and under view, probably.
Yeah, under view.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For me, it pops up on the side when someone shares their screen, so it may be behind something for you.
Right. The print is very small on this. My apologies. It just happened.
I clicked on side-by-side gallery, for multi-speakers, and it pops everybody up on the side.
That's what I have too.
That's under view.
Except for you, Maria.
Yeah. I'm using iPad today because I can't get into my email account on my laptop. So wouldn't you know it, there's a kerfuffle. I can't see. Oh, all right, view there. It's very small. Sorry to delay things. Please proceed, and I'll struggle away.
Today's been one of those stress-filled days, even for me. It's like everything seems to be going wrong.
My goodness.
So why not meetings too? Okay, item number 5, motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting. I believe, Gail, you had some question about...
Well, yes, we talked about it beforehand. All of the yays and nays are incorrect. And particularly the one 7.6 where I actually made the motion and then came down as saying nay against the motion. I mean, and Lauren is going to take care of all of that and make sure that, yes.
Yeah, that was my mistake. My first time doing the minutes, I didn't realize that that those were yeses, that they were yays, and so it's just a process issue. But I'm aware now, and so for this month and for the last month and this month, it'll be correct. Thank you.
And also, just while we're at that, on 7.8, there's just a typo. It's from on page 10, I think it is. Anyway, it's gonna be from Gail Benderfield, update from Gail Benderfield, not for
Okay.
form. It's just a typo.
Okay, I'll make sure that's fixed as well.
Okay.
So should we be just voting on adopting the amended minutes, or should we defer voting on it now and approve them next month?
I think amended minutes would be fine.
Should be
Understanding
sufficient.
and making those changes. Yeah.
Okay. Or were there any more questions, comments, or changes about the minutes? So seeing none, then I guess we need a motion to approve the adopted minutes.
I'll make that if you like. I'll make
Sure.
it.
Thank you, Gail.
Yeah.
And all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Looks like that's done. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Yes, there's a designated property grant application for the homestead, so obviously I need to step out of that.
Anybody else? Yeah, okay. So items of business, 7.1, I guess we'll move on to the 77 Dalhousie at this point.
Yes. Yeah, we can move straight to 77 Dalhousie, understanding that the Global Salmon Way shoe sculpture we'll discuss next month. And Adrian will be here for that. So 77 Dalhousie Avenue is a property that we've received some feedback from the community about. There was a heritage permit for this property granted in 2009. And there are some concerns from a couple of residents regarding some aspects of it, the height and scale, the sighting on the streetscape, and there's some privacy concerns. So I'm just going to put up here. Here's some images of the sorry, the heritage permit was granted in 2019, not 2009. 2019. So we have received some feedback from the community on this structure. At the time when it was received, it was evaluated by the community by the committee as 2.5-story structure. It meets the guidelines, the Port Dalhousie district guidelines for size and scale. And at the time when the committee received the original drawings, they had some comments on both the height and the design. When it was originally submitted, the height did not meet zoning bylaw requirements, which required 9 meters from the center of the roof line, and so the design was changed. The committee also had some comments on the materials and the use of materials, and so those changes were also made. The community perceives the structure as, instead of being a 2-story structure, which is or 2.5-story structure, as a 3-story structure, and that they have concerns that it's taller than the neighboring heritage properties. And what they are requesting is that going forward, that the committee kind of look at some of these issues, look at the adjacent properties, and kind of take into consideration the impact that having a structure that is like right up against the zoning bylaw limits would have on the surrounding residents. both James and I looked into this submission and saw that there was a back and forth between the committee to make sure the structure met zoning requirements. There were some changes made to the height and to the materials and style of the building, and that ultimately the committee at the time did approve and issue a heritage permit for the structure as built. One of the things James did is he had a building inspector go out just to make sure that was being built according to the approved permit, and it is. But also, there's still some concerns from the community, and they asked that we bring them to you. So this item is kind of being submitted as an information item, just to be aware of some feedback from the community and from residents in Port Dalhousie. I don't know if you guys want to discuss some of these issues, or if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, does anybody have any questions about it? Or comments? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions. I don't know if James is able to answer this because it's a building department question essentially, but I remember being at the meeting when this was approved, and I was very concerned about how high it was. And when I look at the drawing, if Lauren, if you could go back to the previous slide.
Yep.
See, I always object to the way we measure height, although I don't know if there's a better way. But presumably, it's supposed to be measured from grade to the mid place of the peak. But when I look at the drawing, I can't quite make out what the dimensions are in terms of the height. But the line at the top that I see where they're showing a measurement seems to be much higher than the midpoint of the peak. And also the line at the bottom, I can't tell whether it's really from grade or from a raised basement, which shouldn't be allowed because grade should be grade. You shouldn't be able to get away with a raised basement and therefore grade is higher. So I don't know if, James, if you can comment on that at all.
Yeah, through the chair. So starting, I guess, from the bottom, in terms of the measurements, at least from what I can see on here, it looks like they're measuring all the way to the ground, at least in terms of the way the line is drawn on the outside of each drawing there. In terms of the midpoint, and Tammy is here as well to perhaps help me with this, but so where they would measure the halfway point would be where essentially, and Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, where the roof would meet the side elevation essentially. So even though there's an overhang that would come down even lower than that, I believe it would be from where that point, like where it meets. So you'd be measuring from that point to the top. And so if that's the case, it looks like it's midpoint to me, or it looks very close to that. So that would be my interpretation of it, but I can see why, because of there is the eaves that hangs down, it makes it look like the roof is even more exaggerated, and so then it looks like the midpoint actually is higher than what the roof line actually is. I don't know if that makes sense, Councillor, but if there's anything that I maybe misspoke on, Tammy's welcome to chime in as well.
Yeah, well, certainly when I look at that line that the measurement goes to on top, it looks to me higher than it looks, sort of halfway up the dormer, but certainly not up higher than the midpoint of the mid roof, the main roof. But that's just my observation. So.
Yeah, through the chair, I think to me where the roof would technically perhaps start is where, so you can kind of see where the railing is across the attic doorway there. You can see kind of the line there. If you extend that out towards the edge of the building, that's kind of where the roof and the side elevations meet. And so I think that would be considered the point where we would start the measurement. And so from there up to the peak, it looks to me like the dashed line is at the halfway point. You'd have to pull out kind of a ruler and measure on either side, right, to see if
Oh,
that's the
okay.
case. But yeah, that would be
Okay,
my
that's
interpretation of it. But definitely
just
understand the
curious.
concern.
Yeah, I would just add for the benefit of the committee that Councilor Williamson and I have been flooded with complaints from certainly from the adjacent neighbors that feel that it's just a total violation of height and of the streetscape, that the setbacks are not appropriate, that the property's set way back versus the frontage of the other building, so it doesn't really not compatible with the streetscape, and also that it looks so totally out of place and incompatible with the heritage homes on either side. But I know I'm just passing on these comments for the benefit of the committee. I know that there's nothing that can be done at this time, but thank you for explaining that.
Through the chair, I'll just also add a couple kind of bits to this. So it's a 2018, 2019 kind of application. So, it's 6 years on now. So it's very rare that we have a building that's constructed this much later than when it was actually approved. So unfortunately, having to go back and figure out, okay, what were the concerns from the committee at the time, was a challenge, because we're kind of at the whim of whatever's in the minutes. So we know that there were discussions about the height and whatnot, but we can't put ourselves in the shoes of the committee at the time, because I think there were only 2 members of the committee currently who were part of the committee back then. The other thing was, the guidelines now are about 20 years old, 20 some odd years old, and over 20 years, because these guidelines, things change in terms of how they're interpreted, and as much as we'd like to be as consistent as possible, there's always going to be projects like this where they're pushing right up against the limits of what's permitted, and I think the intention of a lot of heritage district plans is to revisit those at some point and figure out, okay, what's working, what's not working, because the way that we speak about heritage or talk about heritage changes over time, and what's acceptable and not acceptable kind of changes, and it's very fluid, right? And so in the future, it might be a good idea for the city to actually re-examine the Port Dalhousie guidelines and see what's working, what's not, and see if they're still working for the community. Clearly, this would be the type of project that we would potentially use as an example of maybe what some people think isn't working. I think generally, we do a pretty decent job of trying to maintain consistency, but over 20 years and a lot of projects, there's going to be projects like this where, unfortunately, sometimes these things happen. So definitely understand the concerns of the neighbors on both sides. They certainly, you look at the photos and you can understand where their concerns are. But yeah, so it's unfortunate, but there's not a lot we can do now, but we can try to learn from it in the future.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Chair. My recollection of the guidelines, because I was involved in the original drafting of those guidelines, was that we identified the residential area as being a 2-story area, and the commercial core as being 3 stories. But we keep talking about 2.5 stories, and isn't that kind of stretching the guidelines, because 2.5 stories essentially become 3 stories?
Yeah, through the chair. So I think you can certainly make an argument that a livable space in the attic could constitute a 3rd story. I don't know if in the heritage field, or at least in Port Dalhousie, that's typically how we've looked at those attic spaces. Because they aren't full floors, I think we typically view them as kind of a half story, essentially. I think if you looked at, even the building next door to this one to the right there, it's 2 stories with, a minimal attic right up there. But if that attic space were to be livable or usable in some way, even though it looks like a 2-story building, it would technically then qualify as a 3-story, right? So I think it's a challenging, what constitutes a story is very challenging, I think, and in terms of how spaces are used. So we'd have to, potentially in the future revisit that and figure out, is this a typology that we agree with, and go from there.
Thank you.
Rachel, you've got a comment or question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious about whether, and I realize this isn't strictly speaking a heritage question, but it seems to me like this maybe could have been avoided if people built right away. So is there anything in our, I don't know, municipal bylaws or something compelling people to build within a prescribed period of time, or can they drag their heels the way they appear to have done in this instance? Just curious if anyone knows the answer to that.
Yeah, so through the chair, we don't have basically time limits on our heritage permits at least. So there might be other rules and regulations that will change over time, but for our heritage permits, we don't currently have any sort of time frame for those. And I'm sure Tammy can chime in on some of the other ways that things might change over time, and they would have to come back for approvals.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may, we don't have legislative tools that can force people to build, unfortunately. From a I'll say compliance perspective, what we can do if it's part of a larger development, like that's say perhaps under a site plan agreement, is that we can pull a site plan agreement for a couple of years after it's been approved if we feel that it would be in the best interest of the city. But when it comes to a standalone residence on a lot of record, we really can't force anybody to build. Earlier, James spoke about we can be looking at an update to our HCD plan in the future, and perhaps that's something that we look at through that permitting process. But right now, we don't have any legislative tools available to us that compels people to build.
Thanks. I appreciate those responses. Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Bergen.
Can I say, oh, sorry, I don't have a hand.
Who wants to go first, Dr. Bergen or Holly?
Oh, okay. Very quickly. No, I agree that we've had the heritage regulations in place for a long time. Mostly they've worked out really well. I've been on the committee since its inception, and we've had a few properties that are very unfortunate. And whether they could be changed by revisiting and rewriting portions of the guidelines, I'm not sure, but I think it would be useful to have that discussion and put together just a revisiting and commentary and looking at some of the properties that we think have worked really, really well and some of the ones that have not worked really, really well. Might also be useful for people that are then wanting to build.
Good points. Holly, was that you with a question or comment?
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair. When I was out walking one day and saw this empty lot and I called the number on the sign, I knew the realtor that owned the, I guess, the lot or had his name on the sign. And it was March 16th, 2023. I was just checking my email and he said, oh, I've got some plans some design plans to give you an idea what could be built on that lot. So it was 2023. So I don't know where the 5 years comes from. Unless they made the plans 5 years ago.
Yeah, so through the chair, the applicant would have came in, in 2018 originally, and then they got their approval in 2019, and then for whatever reason, they decided not to pursue construction, and then recently they obviously decided to go through with it. So I don't know if that's COVID related. I'm not sure if that's just change of ownership or anything like that. There's all sorts of different reasons why people come in for approvals and then don't end up building what they get approval for. And so unfortunately we can't really control that. But that's essentially what happened in this case was they waited the 5 years before they actually started construction.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of discussion at the committee level about this proposed design when it was first brought to us, and it was about the dormers on both sides, and I think this one they wanted to have like a glass balcony or something across the front, and there was some question of whether we'd have problems with the neighbors across the street feeling like they were being spied on by people sitting out front. I mean, there's quite a bit of discussion about it, I think, and maybe about a tree on the property as well. Anyway, so do we have any other questions or comments about the update? If not, then I guess we need a motion to receive the update from Lauren. Does anybody wish to make that motion? Mark? Okay, and all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, done. Item 7.2, 31 Main Street. This is for alterations to the house. And
Good afternoon.
okay, Eric, go ahead.
My name is Eric Borgard. I'm with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm here with the architect to my right, Joseph Colonna, as well as to my left, J.K. Seslick from Serafina Constructors, Inc., the owner of the property. We are here before you today to seek the committee's approval for the proposed development at 31 Main Street in Port Dalhousie. You can move to the next slide, please. So on this slide, you see outlined in red the subject land. So it's 31 Main Street. It's located between Brock Street and Simcoe Street. Abutting the lands directly east is a commercial plaza, and west and south are residential uses. The property has a frontage of 17.44 meters, which is 75.22 feet, and a lot area of 573 square meters, which is roughly 6,168 square feet. Next slide, please. This slide shows the designation and zoning. The subject property is designated in the Garden City official plan as low density residential and is identified as being within the Port Dalhousie Heritage Conservation District. The lands are zoned site-specific low density residential traditional neighborhood R2-7. Next slide. This slide shows the existing dwelling and the proposed severed land. The existing dwelling consists of a 2.5-story single detached dwelling constructed in approximately 1924. Here you see the street photos of the existing dwelling and the proposed lot. The existing dwelling consists of a covered front porch with a large rectangular window and door as the main entrance. On the second story are 3 rectangular shaped windows with 2 small windows on either side of the larger window in the middle. The gables are finished with cedar shake cladding material, with the first story containing wood clapboard style siding. Along the easterly wall of the dwelling are 2 rectangular windows that protrude slightly from the wall and are covered. At the rear of the easterly wall face is a second entrance that protrudes from the main dwelling. Could you go to the next slide, please? The permit application before you this afternoon is to allow the construction of a new dwelling on the proposed parcel shown as part 2 on the image in this slide, as well as the accessory structure, the carriage house, that is proposed at the rear of the lot on both the remnant parcel, which is part 1 on this image, and the proposed parcel, and is split along the common wall. We are also requesting that the committee permit the partial demolition of the existing dwelling, allowing the owner to remove the portion of the dwelling that protrudes from the easterly wall face, which is shown on that image as well. Which it's shown, yes, right there in the driveway. The severed lot is shown here as part 2, which has a proposed lot frontage of 7.82 meters and a depth of 32.9 meters. The lot dimensions of the properties along Main Street vary, but what is consistent is the rectangular lot fabric. The proposed severance maintains the rectangular lot fabric for both the severed and remnant parcel. Next slide, please. Here's an elevation of the proposed primary dwelling. The proposed dwelling is 2.5 stories with gable roof and walls and contains board and batten shingle panel materials. You can see on the elevation how the dwelling utilizes the lot depth by having the massing of the dwelling extend along the side lot lines, which is shown on the right portion of the elevations. The front facade contains mostly soft green and sailcloth coloring. It contains a front entrance with a covered front porch and a blue door. and there are rectangular windows proposed on each story. Next slide, please. Here you see the elevations for the proposed accessory structure, which is the carriage house. The carriage house is to be situated in between both lots and severed along the common wall. Each half will have a two-car garage with office space on the second story. Majority of the architectural features are oriented towards the street, with no windows proposed at the rear or side of the structure. The carriage house is proposed to be constructed with similar materials as the primary dwelling and have a similar color scheme. Next slide, please. This slide shows 3 adjacent dwellings along Main Street. You have 32 Main Street, 37 Main Street, and 38 Main Street. All 3 dwellings are similar to the proposed dwelling as they have gable roofs and walls, with the roofs having a similar pitch as what is being proposed for the primary dwelling. The dwellings are generally close to the street, are long and narrow, and have a front facade that is generally symmetrical. Next slide, please. In conclusion, our request to permit 1 new primary dwelling on the proposed lot with an accessory structure on both the proposed and remnant parcel, and the partial demolition of the existing dwelling generally meets the Port Dalhousie Heritage Conservation District policies, for the proposed dwelling is generally compatible with the character of the neighboring properties, and the carriage house is located away from the main facade and outside primary view. With that, I'll end my presentation, and I'm happy to take on any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions or comments about the proposal? Mark?
Yeah, sure. Just a comment, I guess. I think it seems to be a tasteful addition to the downtown. That lot has been empty with no real character beside that commercial building for a very long time. So, and it fits the density requirements of the city as well.
Thank you.
Robert?
Yes, I'm just looking at the, well, I've got what I've got in front of me. The building, the new building to the east of the existing building. What's the height in relation to the eastern commercial building? Is it the same, lower, higher? And the new building, is it the same height as the existing western building to be retained?
You know the answer to that? No? You know the answer to that one? We're just looking into some of the drawings. I can tell you that what is proposed is 7.78 meters.
Yeah, that's all I can. I don't know.
In terms of the height of the commercial plaza, I can't say for sure whether or not it's taller or smaller. I would have to pull up a street image to kind of get an idea as to the size of the commercial plaza. I believe it is relatively similar. I'm not sure if it'll be taller or not, but it'd be quite consistent with the existing dwelling, as the existing dwelling is also 2.5 stories. So it appears in that image that is shown on the screen that it would be similar height. But unfortunately, we don't have the exact measurements of the height of both structures.
Fair. I'm looking at that picture. And do you know, in relation to the building to the west, the existing building to be retained, can you say the height is the same as that building or higher? As we're looking at 2.5 story, and we're looking at a 1.5 approximately to the west, the existing structure.
It should be similar to the existing structure. We'll see if we have drawings here that we might provide you with an exact measurement.
Do we have any other questions or comments about the proposal? The one drawing that you showed of the new build, it looked like at the back end there was going to be like a little porch area or something that was bumped out. Was I just imagining seeing something there? Because it looked like it was going to be encroaching into that mutual driveway between the two of them.
I think if I'm correct, that's the, well, the wood deck on the proposed building. Is everything on the proposed building will be outside of the proposed 3 meter easement. There was the only structure that's encroaching onto the into the easement that's proposed for the driveway, which will have an easement. It is the portion of the building on the existing dwelling, the portion of which that protrudes to the northeast of the building. In terms of the proposed dwelling, there's nothing that will be encroaching.
Answer that question, both the same height.
And to the previous question about the height, they're both the proposed and the existing are the same height.
Again, measured from the midpoint.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so if there are no further questions or comments about it, then I guess we need to have a motion.
Brian,
Mr. Chair?
I see 2 hands up. Carlos and Andrew have their hands up.
Okay. Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess you can't see our hands, but anyway. Just some clarification. I'm confused about what we're calling 2.5 story versus 1.5 story. Like, I believe the applicant said that the existing building is 2.5 stories, but it looks clearly to me like a 2-story building. What makes that a 2.5 story? I'm not sure.
No. Would you say that's 2.5 stories?
That building.
The existing, yes.
That building there.
Yes. There's a little bit of.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything.
There's the main floor. There's appears to be a second floor, and then there's some attic space. So I think the attic space would be considered the half story, unless
that's a half. The attic is a half. You got the single story, so that's a 1.5 story building.
Okay. Sorry, it would be a 1.5 story. Sorry. Or 2.
Well, hold on. I've met Mr. Garcia on site. They can't see me. It's JK speaking. Councilor Garcia, your question is the blue and white house that we're looking at. Your question is it a 1.5 story building or 2.5, or what is it?
That's what I asked, yes.
I'm sorry?
That's what he's asking.
Oh, well, just looking at the building with you, I've been at this 45 years. That is a 1.5 story building.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Yeah, that's a 1.5 story building. But have I answered your question?
So I apologize.
But you're saying the new building would be 2.5 stories.
Yes, I am. But this building is it's going to undergo a refurbishment, a renovation.
It's not even habitable.
The house you're looking at is going to be restored or renovated, refurbished.
Whether it's 2.5, 1.5, the height of the building from midpoint of the structure to the grade will be the same. So it's whether you want 2-story or half story, the height in meters will be
7.78 meters.
7.78 meters.
From grade. The OP is 9 meters.
Thank you. And one more question through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee, essentially. The committee used to always inspect properties for demolition, and this proposal says that you're going to demolish part of this building. Have committee members inspected what's to be demolished?
I don't believe we have.
So I guess through the chair, for this application, it's not really a demolition, as in like this is a demolition application, but more of like a removal and alteration. So that's my interpretation of what is proposed. If it were a demolition of the structure, definitely. But from my interpretation, it's just more of a removal of part of the structure. The actual addition itself is remaining. It's just part of it is being removed.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, thank you.
So I wouldn't describe it as a demolition. Yeah.
Okay. Andrew?
Just a question to clarify that element of it. You referred to that section at the back with the doors, the part that's being removed, and that is shown on your sketches. The part that's not shown anywhere is the window, which also protrudes a little bit. Is that window being left alone, even though it protrudes into the common driveway?
Joe, I think we're leaving the window stays. The window that window there, Joe.
We're basically, yeah, I mean, the bump out window you see on the left side of the existing structure, we're basically using that and duplicating it up and carrying it vertically up to meet and join in with that dormer that you see on the side there. I'm expressing that to be a vertical element all the way up, using what you have and what you have on the roof of the dormer, combining it both as a vertical element.
If you go to the concept plan, the Severance concept plan, that is available. Not that one, this plan right here. You'll see that there is a little bit of space between the easement and the existing dwelling. So that if when you refer back to the image, it really only comes out a few inches, if that. So it should, although it's not necessarily reflected in the concept plan, it shouldn't have an impact on the easement or be in the easement.
It's precisely coming out 6 inches as a projection.
And that's all I wanted to confirm, was that wasn't an inhibiting factor, because you haven't referenced it there. So I assume that's being left alone, even if it's not represented. It's not represented as being taken away on the section where you point at what the part of it that's being removed. So it's just that rear part, not the window. Although you said you may enhance that, but not remove it. Was that my understanding correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bergen?
It would be interesting, we don't have it now, but just to see, these are 2 fairly tall, thin buildings, to see how they would look in the context of the buildings that are to the left and to the right. So just a quick sketch showing the elevations, widths, this sort of thing, in terms of the streetscape. We've had a lot of, I've seen, I understand what these buildings will look like, but I'm not clear how are they going to tower over the buildings that are existing on, I mean, the one is a plaza clearly, but the house on the other side. And I don't know that we can request it for this situation, but it would have been really useful to be able to see that. And that's sort of apropos of what we were talking about at 71 Dalhousie. 71 was proposed, but without a clear consideration of the height on either side. So if we ever move forward or revisit the guidelines, it would be useful to, that might be one way of helping people that are on the committee to see what's really going to happen in terms of impact. Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the existing building and its materials. You mentioned cedar shakes. Are you going to be keeping the same material on that building once remodeled?
More or less, we're basically using the same materials. It could be. I would propose that we duplicate the vertical board and batten to reflect what is beside it, so that both have a kind of a unison continuity. But the gable end, the front gable remains the same. I'm enhancing actually those 3 windows. They could be enlarged. And the porch obviously needs to be renovated. It's falling apart. But basically it's siding, board and batten, and it reflects the new building that's being proposed next to it. Same material, same, except for probably the color schedule could be modified and be different.
So same material as the new building, but you were going to remove the cedar and not replace the cedar on the existing building. Is that right?
Well, Mark, it's JK speaking, Mark, the builder or owner. Indirectly, did you want me to reuse cedar? Do you want me to reproduce a cedar shaped look? What, again, I don't understand the question. Did you want me to use a shaped look on that gable or tie it in with the house beside me?
I was just wondering if we were going to be replacing it. That would be an interesting idea to use cedar on the new build as well. I'm just kind of opening up that.
Yeah, I'm a heritage
discussion.
builder in Ottawa. I can use cedar. Given the climate in Ottawa, I would choose not to get in there with Sikkens and Pratt Lambert paint every second year. But the cedar shaped look is more than doable, but not necessarily in cedar. That's why I don't understand did you want me to use cedar or composite? I don't.
Yeah, I suppose the look to retain the look of it. I'm just thinking about what other people might say, because we've, like in the neighborhood, if they do like that look, if they want to keep that look. I haven't walked down the street to see and talked to many people downtown about that. But is that something that people want to see, retain
That's a great question, because 3 of the neighbors are personal friends of mine. And I met Councillor Garcia about a year ago. I'm on site, I'm the actual builder. Again, it's like 30, don't quote me, 38 Main Street, John and Trudy have been there 47 years. They have the gingerbread molding, the kind of that Cape Cod blue look. I am personally not a gingerbread molding cedar shake guy on the front gable, but again, it's JK. I'm right there. If it's just one of those things, it's Port Dalhousie, it's Main Street. I'm right there. If people want a cedar shake on the front gable, I have no problem. But it's just one of those things. I have no problem either way.
Yeah, I was just curious if you were going to keep it. That's all. Thanks for clarifying.
Just to step in, Brian, sorry, through the chair. This application is just for the new structure and severance. So any alterations to the existing building would also require a heritage permit. So any material changes or openings changes, and those drawings would have to be submitted for a heritage permit as well. But right now, what we are considering is the new structures and the severance. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess we need to have a motion to approve the alterations to 31 Main. Does anybody wish to make that motion? Mark? Okay, and all in favor?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, Gail, oh, okay. Okay, so I guess that's done.
Just to confirm, the motion is in support of the severance, the proposed dwelling, but also the alteration to the existing dwelling involving the part that protrudes, correct?
Yes, yeah, that has been included because it's required for the severance and for the construction of the new buildings. But any other alterations to the window openings or materials would require a separate heritage permit.
Thank you for the comment.
I think
Thank you.
through the chair, sorry, not to jump in. Maybe we can. I know we've already passed this motion, sort of, but maybe we could tweak it to represent that reflect that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed new residence at 31 Main Street as part of a potential future severance. Because obviously this also needs to go through the Committee of Adjustment as well. So the heritage approval does not permit them to actually construct the building. They'll have to actually also get approval from the Committee of Adjustment and go through the building permit and whatnot. So I think we just want to clarify what exactly is being approved here. So it looks like Lauren's working on that now. But
how's that look?
I think that's maybe what I'm not sure if that was Eric speaking or not, but I think that's maybe what you're asking about, right? With making sure that the motion is clear.
Yes, I'm just reading it right now. And just want to confirm that there's language regarding the existing dwelling.
Yeah, so maybe you could say that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed new residence at 31 Main Street and the alterations to the existing house, or alterations or removal of the rear addition, maybe that might be more specific.
Well, it's not the rear addition, it's just that side.
Yeah,
Throughs
that's
into
fair.
Yeah,
the,
it's part of.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
part of the rear addition works.
Yeah.
Is everybody? It looks like Robert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had some concerns about the height not exceeding the existing building. So I want to ensure that that we're getting what we expect to get.
Yeah, so through the chair, so the plans that have been submitted are what they would get their heritage permit for. If they were to exceed that significantly, they'd have to get, essentially 9 meters is the maximum they are permitted anyways by zoning. They would have to get a minor variance to go beyond that. Right now they're at 7.75, I think, somewhere around there. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room beyond that. But if they were to come in for changes that were more significant, they would have to come back to the committee to get everybody's approval on that.
Fair enough. And if the area permits 9 meters, just there you go. They're nothing. Thank you.
So I think we'll have to have a re-vote on this motion that's in front of the committee. So we'll need somebody to make this motion, and then we'll have a re-vote.
So who wishes to make the motion?
John Crawley here. I will.
John, thank you. And all in favor?
Yes.
Yes, I've got my hand up and and the yellow hand as well.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't see all the hands up and whether that carried or not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, okay, I guess it's done.
Great. So thank you, Eric. We'll be in touch soon with your heritage permit, and obviously you still have more to go through with the Committee of Adjustment and whatnot. But we'll be in touch tomorrow or on Monday.
Thank you for the committee as well.
Okay, moving on to item 7.3, a grant application for the Brown Homestead. I guess Mackenzie is here to razzle dazzle us.
I'm assuming I don't have control of the. Okay.
Yeah, just say next slide, and I'll move to the next slide.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for having me. My name is Mackenzie Campbell. I'm the project manager at the Brown Homestead. Today I am presenting on a request of $5,000 grant for masonry repairs to the exterior of the northeast corner of the John Brown House at the Brown Homestead. I would like to point out why the project is significant, specifically for our masonry restoration. So as stated in our application, one of the John Brown House's listed features in our designation is the Rockaway dolomite limestone that it's built of. It's the only existing example in Niagara of a house built entirely from it. So it shows that it is a rarity and that it is worth conserving and preserving. Next slide. So in my presentation, I will cover all details of the restoration project, including the masonry work, which the grant will help fund. So that's repointing and rebuilding the exterior northeast corner of the John Brown House. And then the supporting work, which the organization has completed prior or will be completing after the masonry work. So that includes downspout and eaves trough repair and replacements and interior plaster restoration. Next slide. So just to get situated, for those who haven't visited the Brown Homestead yet, I'm just going to point out the different layers of the building. So the building to the right, the smaller structure, it's the original summer kitchen that was on the property first, which was built in 1796. And then the larger house was then built in 1802 to 1804. And the 1920s garage was then added as well. The water runoff issues that we've experienced are to do with the 1802 John Brown House and the 1920s garage. Next slide. So this slide shows the condition of the corner, the southeast corner, or sorry, northeast corner from the beginning of the project. We noticed that the corner looked pretty saturated. We knew that there was some water flowing issues, but it was hard to determine, obviously, when it was raining, but on the days that it was dry out, you could tell that the wall was quite saturated and the masonry was a lot darker than the rest. And then on the interior of the house, I started noticing that the plaster that unfortunately we just restored last year the paint was bubbling and that it was clearly wet and needed to be looked at. So we had a mason come on site and take a look, and ultimately he decided that we should look at what's going on with the water flow first and then go from there. So for this project, we're going to have to look at all three things, the masonry restoration, the eaves trough restoration, and the plaster restoration. So if you want to go to the next slide. So we noticed that this issue closely resembled the water problems that the house faced in 2017. We had similar issues with the joints. There was a lot of mortar that had clearly come out. The faces of the stone had eroded, and we knew that there was a larger problem there. And then from the interior, you could tell that the plaster had rotted. So that's the parlor on the southeast side, and we ended up getting the mortar repointed and the exterior restored in 2017, and then last year we were able to get the plaster cornices restored as well. So if you want to move to the next slide. So this was after going through kind of an investigation of what was going on. We ended up having Patrick Van Velzen of Van Velzen Masonry come out and conduct a water test on the roof of the 1920s garage. And we determined a few things. The downspouts the seams were coming undone, and there was quite a bit of water that was just flowing out of the downspout and onto the wall on the east side there that you could see in the first photo. And then we also noticed that the eaves trough that collects water that's circled there underneath, all of that flashing is pushing it towards and into that eaves trough, which then pushes it to the other side where the downspout connects. the eaves trough was actually pried down, and none of that water was actually going into the eaves trough. It was pushing over top of it. So we noticed that it was actually just pushing onto that wall. So the wall was being soaked by two different issues. If you want to go to the next slide. So the first thing that we did was actually look at the top of the wall there and focus on the problem from the top down. So we looked at our collector boxes. So those collector boxes were put onto the house in the 1980s. They aren't in our designation, but they were designed by the late Peter Stokes, who was a Niagara architect, and he was pretty significant in the heritage world. So we thought instead of taking them off, even though they're not originally there, we are going to keep them and we were going to replace them. So we got them made of copper and replicated and put back on. And then we ended up going and getting the downspouts done as well. And we actually got the diameter of the downspout a little bit larger because the metalsmith, who's Daryl Smith, he determined that it would help with the water flow if we had a bit of a wider space for it to go down, because our gutter system really relies on very few downspouts. We don't have a ton on each side. It's always just one on the one side of the house. So with that, we're hoping that that will create a better water flow from all angles. So then from there, I will mention, we ended up keeping the original boxes and we kept them as artifacts. And it is a big thing for people to come in and be able to see those and be closer to them because they are so far up on the house. So it's kind of cool. If you go to the next slide. So then the next issue that we were looking at was how do we fix the eaves trough from bending over. We ended up adding more brackets. So we had 3 more copper brackets placed in that actually pried up the eaves trough. And then we put in a new flashing guard there in the corner to help reflect the water down. And then this diagram here shows you where the water has to flow to get to the downspout. So now all of that water is running properly down to the right. And we did another water test to ensure that that was running properly. So then that way we're able to move on to the masonry repairs. So if you want to go to the next slide. So once all that work was completed, we realized that we got to move on to the masonry repairs. And to start with, we had Patrick come out and check out what the joints look like right now. There was masonry repairs done by the previous homeowner, and he did use not heritage sensitive material. His mortar was he definitely used I guess the wrong, like a harder mortar. So put it in terms everyone understands. If you use a harder mortar than the stone actually ends up being sacrificed instead. And we could tell that from a lot of the stone that's on our walls, because of the faces of the stone have quite dolomite stone is similar to slate, so it kind of flakes off. So we've seen a lot of that flaking happening. So we have to figure out what process we go through first with that. So that would be taking out any old mortar and putting in new mortar, as well as filling in any of the gaps that are there. So the materials that we are going to use are hand tools for removal, and so hammer and chisel, so not any electric, to again protect the face of the stone. And then we're going to use quicklime to repoint with. We actually have our own mortar recipe, which is 1 part lime, 2 parts coarse sand, 1 part fine sand. And then we actually have it's 2 tablespoons of dark buff masonry pigment, which John Laundrie, a heritage mason, created for us. So we're going to continue with that for the repair. And Patrick Van Velzen of Van Velzen Masonry, like I mentioned before, will be completing the work. We are kind of fighting the clock here because we do want to beat the snow. So we thought it would be best to go with a mason that has worked on the site before and is familiar with not only the house, but also the recipe and all that. So that's the reasoning why we went with him. If you go to the next slide. The next step after that would be restoring the plasterwork. So I will be completing that on the interior, and again, we'll be using a plaster recipe that includes quicklime, which we've done throughout the house regularly. So that will be done afterwards, and then we'll be able to put the shelving back on. And then you go to the next step. So I just wanted to point out some of the exterior masonry restorations that we've undertook through the rest of the house, or through the rest of the exterior of the building. We've worked hard on noticing where there needs to be, like, where the most damaging areas are and what needs to be handled first. Obviously, a full exterior restoration would be very costly and very timely. So the organization's focused really on finding the spots that need it the most, and then working our way around the building. So this will be really the third large restoration project we'll work on the exterior. But again, we have lots of experience doing it. And I just wanted to point this out because the grant would be very helpful to just continue that work and conserving the exterior of the building. And then the next slide. So thank you for letting me present. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, thanks, Mackenzie. Yeah, any questions or comments about the proposal? Mark.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. Thanks. It was a great presentation, by the way. One, I know that you want to try and streamline this for before winter, it sounds like. Just a concern of using air limes, which is not like hydraulic limes or with any added pozzolans in it. For air limes, like especially just quicklime and sand, it's important for the mortar to have at least 90 days without any potential frost to develop the proper pore structure in lime. Unless you're using, like, some people use like volcanic dust or other stone dusts or brick dust to create a more hydraulic set over time, even if you're just using straight lime. So just be careful be careful before winter using just a straight line.
Okay.
3 months is usually key. And another question, do you guys know that it was a straight hot lime mix when it was built, or did they use pozzolans in the 1700 or early 1800s when this was being built?
I will speak on what I know, just because I did read through John Laundrie's analysis. He did in 2015. He did an analysis of the building, and that's the mix that he came up with through his analysis. So that being said, I don't have the expertise to go through that and determine that, but I would trust what he's determined just based off of his expertise. So I know I can't really. I'm not sure. So sorry, I'm just reading through this right now. So it's based on one of the earliest examples that he found. He mentions that there was softer mortar and sacrificial mortar throughout the structure, but that's based on, like, because we had the previous homeowner who did own the property and he did a lot of fixing on it. He would have created different mortar mixes. But other than that, I know I can make an assumption based on the interior work. I've done a lot of work on the interior, especially with plaster work and everything like that. And I've found a lot of different mixes of plaster work. So I could assume that the families that had lived there in the past have also fixed it up, and that would have been 4 different families. So that's 4 different people making different mixes. So I'm assuming, John, what he did find was the oldest example. If that answers the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
And thank you for your tip. I did write down what you said, and I'll pass it on to Patrick. I did ask him though from the beginning if timeline was okay, and he said it was. So
yeah,
he's looking to start next week, actually.
Okay, it's in my experience, that's pushing it. But if he's comfortable with it, and you guys are comfortable spending that kind of money before winter, that's. I mean, we have milder winters now too, so hopefully it'll be okay.
That's also what he mentioned. Sorry, I'm not used to this type of format. I would assume that I guess we will consult with him to see if he agrees with those timelines and not. But from my understanding, the grant has to be used this year, right? 2024.
So through the chair, we can do the approval this year. So you can get approved for the Brown Homestead get approved for the grant. But obviously we wouldn't want you to proceed with work that you didn't feel was good for the building. if it was a case where there wasn't comfort in, or if you didn't feel comfortable doing this type of work before the frost sets in, there would be no concerns about waiting until after the winter to do that work. So you can get the approval now and do the work later. Yeah, so don't be too concerned about that.
Okay. We did mention to him the timelines from the start before we did the application, and he was okay with it. He does a lot of exterior masonry on new and old homes, so he felt okay with it.
Maria.
Yes, just a point of order. When my iPad was out of order at the beginning of the meeting, I missed the agenda item for declarations of interest. And although I'm following Mackenzie's excellent report very keenly, because I am a volunteer at the Brown Homestead, I will be declaring an interest, and I will have to abstain, unfortunately, from any decision making on this item. I missed the opportunity earlier when my iPad wasn't functioning.
Well, then I guess does that put me in jeopardy as well, because I'm closely connected to being on the board at the Brown House, although I'm not remunerated for it. But
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I also volunteer, but I personally didn't feel that I had a conflict because I don't receive any type of remuneration. Maybe it would be different if I did, but as I don't. I mean, I think everyone maybe needs to make their own individual decisions around that. But for me personally, I decided not to declare an interest, but full disclosure, I do volunteer, but it is unpaid.
so should we be recusing ourselves from the discussion because some of us are on the board and some of us volunteer, or is that not an issue? Councillor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just to, if I can clarify perhaps a little bit, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which certainly us at council have to abide by, and by inference, committee should abide by as well, essentially defines a conflict as pecuniary, and also it says that individuals have to declare their own conflict based on their conscience. In other words, I can't say I think the chair has a conflict because it's on the board. Like, it's up to you as an individual if you feel there is any kind of a pecuniary conflict there. And Director Kite may want to comment on that, but that's my understanding.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Garcia is correct. I'm wondering if, with all of the attendance here today, if all of the volunteers or board members were to recluse themselves, if we would still have even quorum. I'm still trying to check into what we could possibly do right now. So let's just let the dialogue continue, and I'll be working behind the scenes here.
Gail, you have a question?
Not a question, but a comment to sort of support what's just being said by both Councillor Garcia and through you to the others. I do not volunteer there, but I volunteer for other organizations such as the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario and others as well. And the clear legal point that has been made to volunteers who do not receive remuneration of any kind is that they're okay and clear. It has to be, if you even if you have an honorarium of $50, you might have a problem. But with these other organizations to which I volunteer my time, I'm fine and clear to make it a point. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, thanks, Gail.
And through the chair, we've had the Brown Homestead's been in front of us a few times in the last few years, and so if you previously had voted on this type of item, and then I think everybody would be okay if you were able, if you felt like you could vote on it again here. If you don't feel comfortable, obviously do not. But just a reminder that we have voted on this property previously, and we didn't have these types of concerns usually, except for obviously Andrew. So yeah. But I think Tammy's actually able to chime in.
Yeah, if I can chime in just because I'm listening. I also have no financial interest either. I'm a volunteer as well. I'm not paid by the homestead. My financial interest is it costs me a lot of money, not that I receive any money. So, but I think I would still feel better about recusing myself just because my involvement is pretty substantive. So,
Tammy.
Hi, thank you. And through the chair, I have asked the city's deputy clerk to join in quickly. I thought that might be helpful to the chair and the members of the committee if they have any questions they want to ask, and it'll give us clarity while we're in the moment on how to proceed on this matter because it hasn't come up before, and I just want to make sure that we all feel comfortable with our declarations and how when to self-declare in this matter. So this individual should be joining us. I think I just heard a ding. Shouldn't be joining us shortly. Hello, Evan McGinty. So the deputy clerk has now joined us, and to bring you very quickly up to speed, we have now finished a presentation on the Brown Homestead, which, as you know, is the oldest building in the city of St. Catharines, and we're very lucky to have a very dedicated group of volunteers who commit to working on this property. A lot of those dedicated volunteers also serve as members of our heritage committee. So before we get to any tabling of motions and voting, there may be some questions by the chair and the members of committee around declaring conflict of interest. So Evan, apologies for putting you on the spot so last minute, and I'll turn it over to the chair and others.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so like I say, basically with myself, I'm on the board of the the Brown Homestead, but not paid by the board in any way. So is this going to create a conflict on my part?
So, I mean, if we go through the procedures, really, if you're looking for advice on whether a matter is a conflict of interest, that really should be determined by the integrity commissioner. It's not something where we as staff or really a member of the public can say it is or it isn't a conflict. And it's up to the individual member to declare a conflict if they believe they have a conflict of interest. So someone can't declare a conflict for someone else. You as the member have to declare if you have one. And a conflict can also be non-pecuniary. It can just be that you are involved in the organization, or it could be perceived that by your involvement that you're advancing their needs, and it may not necessarily have to be financially. Kind of our rule of thumb, if we were asked by a counselor, is we would always advise them to contact the integrity commissioner for a written opinion. But if you are in doubt, then it's always better to declare a conflict and just play it safe that way. If you go down the rabbit hole, a member of the public could file a formal, code of conduct complaint against someone if they believe that they should have filed a conflict of interest. So I know it's not exactly a firm answer. I'll be the first to admit that, but that is the nature of a conflict of interest. Is it really is up to the individual, and it's always best to consult with our integrity commissioner.
Yeah. Then there was, concern about, whether this is going to impact on, quorum for, for this particular issue, if all of us were to, declare a conflict.
Well, so if someone declares a conflict, then it no longer counts towards quorum. So you don't have to worry about it that way. I guess based on your comment there, are you suggesting that like literally every member of the committee would be declaring a conflict?
No, but I'm just saying there's a few of us that if we potentially did, would it be, impact on the quorum?
No. So basically the best way to think about it would be for that item, it would not their inability to participate wouldn't affect quorum. No. So that's fine there because you still have quorum right now for the meeting. So if two or three had to be removed, even if that brings you down below what quorum should be, say for a meeting, you're okay because they're still present, but they had to declare a conflict of interest.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else on the committee have questions about this for Evan? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, then I guess we should maybe move on to the motion. We approved the grant application for 1317 Pelham Road for $5,000 to cover the masonry repairs. Robert, you wish to make the motion? Yeah, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, I would love to make the motion.
Thank you. Okay. And all in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Looks like that's done, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be in contact tomorrow, start the process of getting the materials together so we can start processing the grant through finance. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to item 7.5, the fire at 164 King. Lauren, I think that's your bailiwick.
That's on me. Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen, getting this all set up again. All right. So unfortunately, there was a fire at the listed property at 164 King Street. The property was vacant at the time. It's put this up here. At 164 King Street is Italian style building that's been on the register, built circa 1860s. The fire occurred on October 27th, starting on the ground floor. So this is something that we were alerted to, and it raises concerns and concerns that other members have brought up regarding risks associated with vacant heritage buildings downtown, kind of fire hazards, and buildings that are susceptible to demolition by neglect. So I know that Holly in particular wanted to discuss some of these issues. There are other at-risk properties downtown that people are concerned about. And so it's flagged as something that the committee should be made aware of, and also, opened up for discussion. Although there is damage to the building, I think the preliminary message that we're getting is that the building can be retained, but also obviously there's been a lot of damage to it. So we're waiting to hear back on the status of the building.
Okay. Yeah, I walked past the building the other day, and I noticed that the one window on the left-hand side on the ground floor, it looks like it was partly blown out by the heat of the fire, and a bit of smoke damage or smoke staining on the exterior brickwork. So, it suggested to me that there was more of a fire than what we were, initially led to believe. But it could have been worse, could have been, a total loss.
Yeah.
Andrew, you have a comment?
Just, I'm a little bit familiar with this building, having been through it. So I just looking at this picture to give people a little bit of insight. If the article that was in the paper was accurate, what they said was the fire was contained to the room of origin, which is the room through the door there. The door and the two windows on either side are one apartment. There were two apartments in that back section. So that apartment, that's just a two-room apartment. The one room is through that door. Then there's a little kitchenette and a washroom in there. And then the window to the right in the larger part of the structure is essentially the bedroom that goes with that unit. And it's two big French doors that open between those two rooms. So there would be at least significant smoke damage in that room. The two windows to the left of the together to the entrance, that's a separate apartment, so it would be closed off from the area where the fire was theoretically. And then the rest of the house is separate from those apartments. Definitely, as of a few years ago, when I walked through, it's a beautiful house that's been allowed to decay over time. And one of my concerns has been the turret, which was showing signs of structural issues, and it was one of the problems when the owner at that point was trying to sell it. And it was, I believe, he did end up selling it, and it's now being sold again by one of the by whoever bought it from him. And this is a property I pointed out to James a couple of years ago because I was concerned that the property was being listed as a development site, saying an ideal location for a high-rise downtown, which of course is not possible to do without demolishing this building, which has a significant history. And I know Brian knows something about the history of this, and as well, I get occasional emails from Kimberly Monk, who you all know. She's very concerned because a big part of the history of this property is related to the shipbuilding history of St. Catharines and so on. So she also, like Brian and I, consider it a very significant downtown property.
Yeah, and this is the second fire that's been in the house. There was one probably about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And I think that was
2005. Sorry, I just found the old Standard article. Apologies for interrupting, but it was May of 2005.
Yeah, and that was, I think, sort of in the front part of the house where that fire started, but they were able to do the repairs and restoration on it quite well. Thanks for the date clarification, by the way.
The article also deemed it suspicious. Just going to add that in there. The article from 2005.
Any other questions, Mark?
Yeah, it's just nothing that hasn't already been said. I did drive by last night and found that the shell is still in good condition, other than some smoke staining. That's about it. But I guess there was a reason why, after what was it, 1666 in London, they forbade timber frame buildings, in all new developments were to be built with brick or stone. So this is a good thing that it's a masonry building.
And I received a couple of comments from people who used to be on the Heritage Committee, and they were quite concerned about this fire, and they said, let's hope that this doesn't turn out to be another Welland House kind of situation, or what we call insurer's lightning taking care of the house. So yeah. Holly, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I was just like wondering if there was any type of protocol that like a checklist or a clipboard that people check from the city about these properties. Is there something that happens that we don't know, like how these properties are checked? If they're vacant, like I think I said before, I have a commercial property, and if it's vacant, the insurance wants you every day to go through it. I need to send in a report, a picture, a diary, a journal of inside, outside, checking the whole premises of the property daily.
I think Tammy's going to answer the question that I was potentially going to answer, but go ahead, Tammy.
Oh, thank you. Apologies for that. Through the chair to the committee members. So the city council has passed what's called a vacant building registry bylaw, where individuals who own vacant properties are expected to register their vacant building with the city, and compliance with that bylaw means they have to ensure that the property cannot be accessed by outsiders, and secondly, that they have to sign in through a portal and provide an attestation as well as evidence that they have been attending to the property on a regular basis and what their notes or findings have been. Furthermore, staff take investigation of the properties that are on that registry as well to ensure that there's compliance, and we have regular contact with the owners to make sure of any notes of compliance that we see that are problematic, like access to the site or anything like that. So the purpose of the vacant building bylaw is twofold. One, to protect the assets and public safety, and two, to encourage them to move forward with either occupying the building or going through some type of application process for development of the property. Unfortunately, in this case, the property had not been registered on the vacant building registry, and our bylaw enforcement team at that time had not been made aware via complaint that the property was not registered on the vacant building registry.
Interesting.
Thanks. Andrew?
Just we had a conversation about a topic very similar to this on the designation subcommittee meeting, and it was in part because we're trying to set the prioritization list for which properties do we research first. And the reality is, if you look at how many buildings are on the registry, and then how many that are not on the registry that perhaps ought to be, I think it's certainly beyond the capacity of the city to keep an eye on all of them. And we've agreed to do a little drive around ourselves and look for risk factors, be it condition, if it's vacant and so on, so that we can put a higher priority on those properties that are potentially at risk. And I would say that doesn't have to just be the subcommittee. I would encourage anyone who's on this committee, or anybody who who's interested in the best interest of these buildings, to keep an eye out yourselves, familiarize yourselves with the registry, keep an eye out, drive by as you travel around. And I think in recent years, some of the issues we had with the Welland House before the fire there shows that if you bring the attention to the city, they will be responsive to it. So I think we can definitely assist with that and providing the information. And but realistically, when you talk about the number of buildings, it's just unrealistic to expect the city to have their thumb on every single one of those and keep an eye on all of them. It would be unwieldy. So I encourage everyone to pitch in and keep your eyes open.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, that still means that, these buildings are still threatened by, matches that might get dropped at 3 o'clock in the morning or something. I mean, we can't have eyes on them 24/7, but we can only do our best and try. Any other questions or comments about this? Otherwise, I guess we should make a motion to receive the information about 164 King. Maria, you're making the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And all in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Good enough. Moving on to item 7.6, the heritage plaque research for the Zion Baptist Church and the oil fountain. Lauren, take it away.
Still not sure how to actually pronounce that. We can get some people to like the oil fountain.
I think you've misspelled it here too.
I'm going to interrupt. It's just oil, like in Texas oil. It's oil, not oily. It's oil.
Is it just oil?
Yeah,
Okay.
the Historical Society met at it for every year annually and planted a geranium top. It's oil.
Okay. We can have that.
Is it not Oillie?
Yeah, it's
Oillie.
misspelled. Yeah.
Oillie.
Well,
I can't change it here. Okay. Oh yeah. I have it correct in the.
There you go.
Just in that one spot, it's incorrect. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. Oil.
Just
fountain.
oil.
Just oil fountain. Okay. All right. So, as you know, the committee has there are funds allocated for some sort of plaque or public installation every year that the Heritage Committee can look at and allocate according to need around the city and resources around the city that are deemed important. And then in the past, this has gone to a variety of different applications and restorations of plaques and new plaques and other projects being completed by other organizations and groups throughout the city who also have a similar mandate. Previously, this committee has discussed different potential resources that a plaque would be suitable for, and two of those being the Zion Baptist Church and the oil fountain. So kind of a part of making sure that these funds are used and that the committee's mandate is undertaken. We've been putting together a little bit of research on two potential plaques, one for the Zion Baptist Church and one for the oil fountain. So far, we've put together some resources, have been in discussion with Adrian at the museum, looked at some of the resources available, and I've put together just a very, very extremely draft language that present to the committee. We can kind of put out there. I know Adrian still has to comment on this. We still have a lot of consultation to undertake, but just wanted to do a brief update on where we are with those and maybe present them to the committee for consideration, not for approval, but just to be aware that these are the two resources that we're interested in plaquing, and that this research is underway. So we were suggested a word limit of 150 words, and so kind of looking at where these resources will go. So we have like a budget of $5,000, and I know for the Zion Baptist Church, because it is no longer at the original location, we have been in conversations with the Salem Chapel about putting a plaque there just to commemorate this history. I just wanted to put this in front of the committee. We can perhaps circulate or get feedback on some of the language and discuss kind of what's important about these resources that we want to make sure is recognized, and so that we can ensure that that's considered as we move forward with the plaques. So I wasn't sure. Should I read this, or can everyone see? Okay, good, excellent.
Now, would these be actual, excuse me, like freestanding plaques that we'd be putting up, or would they be like the little signs that Adrian had done last year that would be mounted on like a telephone pole?
I think it depends on where we decide to mount them. I think for the Zion Baptist Church, it would be a freestanding plaque. But I know for the oil fountain, there are lots of places to mount a plaque there, so that hasn't been determined yet. It may in that area, it's a really tight space, and so that may not be the most appropriate to have like a separate plaque with its own stand, and it may not be the most appropriate place. Yeah.
Well, with the oil fountain, because you've got that, garden area between the courthouse and the old courthouse and where the fountain is, you could probably put a plaque on the inside of the fence close to where the fountain is, that people could either read it if they were inside that garden area, or read it if they're on the sidewalk, depending on which way the plaque would be facing.
Yes, and I know there is already a plaque there, and James and I were talking about that too. But there are opportunities there as well. I don't know, James, if you have anything to say or jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, so through the chat, the only thing I would add maybe is we have $5,000, and so $5,000 unfortunately doesn't get us as far as maybe it used to, and so I think what we'll have to do is we'll get in touch with the company that we've typically used for these and get a quote and find out what the cost might be. If a smaller sign that's for the fountain in particular makes sense, and makes sense also from a financial perspective, then I think that's probably a route that we will go. But we'll have conversations with the supplier to find out what the cost might be, and we'll do something that ensures that we can both use the money that we have available to us, and that both the fountain and the church are there's a good quality sign there, right? That reflects the history and tells the story of each of those assets.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is if we can receive this item, and then maybe I can kind of distribute a bit more information about the plaques, the options, and the text. And it's something that we can, continue to work on going forward in the next couple of months.
And the other thing I'll add through the chair is just typically, I mean, we have in the past had a plaque subcommittee, and they've done work on these types of things. Because we're running short on time in 2024, we thought it would make sense just to take the initiative on our end and put together this work and then circulate it to the entire group to chime in on. And also keeping in mind that we also there's other priorities like the Downtown Heritage District work and the designations work as well. So everybody here is just volunteers, and so we don't want to take up everybody's time with a lot of meetings. So hopefully everybody doesn't mind just in this case reviewing this text, chiming in on it, and providing your feedback. And then in the future, if we have a need to restart the plaques committee, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Unofficially, if I had to pick between the two of them, my personal choice would be the Zion Church, because I think people know less about that than they do about the oil fountain. Gail.
Yes, and of course, the oil fountain is my favorite thing, as you know from my many times there. Are we going to have what I see on the screen sent to us?
Yeah, I'll send it around,
Please,
and
because
yeah,
I
and
think
we can do some. Yeah,
I would certainly like to see, and I know I've been on the board of directors of the Historical Society of St. Catharines way too many times, since 1985 off and on. But that is the Historical Society, started putting the geranium in. It was not the city itself. We'd occasionally
interesting.
ask the city, thank you very much, could one of your councillors turn up and join us? It always happened in May. And many times we had the mayor one time, we had other councillors come, city councillors come and join the Historical Society. But I would like to see them mentioned because
Okay.
it started with them,
Very
with us. I'm still a member. I may not be a board member as of this year, but I am a longtime member, and it was the Historical Society's initiative. It was not that of the city.
Very interesting.
Okay,
Good to know.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I
Dale.
apologize, but I have to leave, but thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Holly.
Bye, Holly.
Andrew, question, comment?
Yeah, I agree with Brian that I would prioritize the Zion Baptist Church if you were going to choose. At the same time, we're talking about putting the plaque at a secondary location, and I think we're going to have another opportunity to try to locate a plaque on the actual site of the church once the property, which is now on the market, sells and there's a new owner. So that might be a consideration for some people if we're trying to prioritize, because it's very nice of them down the street to offer to host a plaque, but having it on the actual site would be preferable, and that opportunity may arise. Just a thought.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have to excuse myself because of another commitment, but I know that on the agenda you have an update from James on the heritage designation for the downtown district, potential district. I understand through my fellow councillor who is on that committee or task force that we're getting a lot of objections from some of the members in the Downtown Association, and the Downtown Association has now reversed her original support on this. So hopefully James will be able to share all this with you. I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there, but once these things get going, it's pretty hard to stop them. But
Yeah.
thank you, everybody in the committee, for all their work.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Thanks, Carlos.
Do we have any other comments or questions about the plaque issue? John Crawley?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what material are these plaques being considered made from? Because I noticed one of the aluminum signs put up by what's his name from the museum was vandalized down on St. Paul Street, and I straightened it out as much as I could when I was walking by it, but it's a shame to see all this stuff, these plaques being destroyed by vandals.
Yeah, through the chair, I think we'll chat with the company that provides a lot of these plaques for the city, and find out what the best material would be, and what they think is best from a vandalism point of view. Yeah, unfortunately, it's hard to prevent that from happening, but perhaps there is a material that's easier to clean or easier to fix if vandalism does occur. But we'll look into that.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that we've had in the past is that people have been, taking things like, say like a carpet knife or something, and they've been slicing the surface off the plaque and taking it home for a souvenir. I guess once you cut it, you can just peel them right off. So it has been a problem in the past.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll definitely.
So do we have can I have a motion to, if there's no further discussion, to receive the information about the plaques?
I'd like to make that, and I look forward to having some editing work done on the two descriptions that we will get.
Yeah, they're very, very draft, so I encourage you to do that.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Dale.
Barb. Okay.
And all in favor of the motion? Okay. Item 7.6, monument cleaning demonstration. This looks like it should be interesting. So Mark, take it away.
Oh, you're on mute.
I don't have a presentation prepared or anything. I know I was going to say a few words about it. But We did a demo, cleaning demo at City Hall in St. Catharines. James was there, along with a couple other members of the city, and we cleaned off some just atmospheric pollution, a bit of algae on top of some of the coping stones, and worked very well. I'll give you just what this machine is that what you're seeing here is it's a high heat system. So it boils water under pressure to get it to 150 degrees out of the nozzle, right? So when you boil water under pressure, it boils at a higher temperature. So this machine requires less water. So you're getting the cleaning power of water in a liquid state at 150 degrees Celsius. So and at very low pressure. So like, I think we got maybe, it was about 70 bar on this one, or 50 bar, I think is all that we used to like a max. Just so you don't know, bar, it was probably maybe 1200 PSI at the max we were using. And this uses like 5 liters per minute at the most, at its highest operation power, as opposed to many gallons per minute with other cleaners and pressure washers. So they wanted to see what this was like, because it's used in spec'd all over the world for sensitive masonry projects like limestone, any softer bricks and mortars, and it won't take the polish off of like polished marble or granite or something like that. So if you have a headstone or any ledges or something like that that have been soiled, it's used to take off paint as well. Sometimes without the use of any chemicals, it just peels off the paint as if it was a scraper, without penetrating the wall so much with high pressure, right? So it dries within like a couple minutes to the touch. It might be a little bit warm, but it's not so saturated. So it's good for historic projects and the like. So this is City Hall that you're looking at right here, cleaning off some of that black soot that had accumulated on it. And what's nice about like getting this stuff off, like if it's algae, it takes off algae, molds. What's nice is that it kills the spores of algae because it has such high heat. So it's not just going to blow it onto something else and then it forms on another surface. What was I about to say? It'll take up like gum, like even uses like gum, it'll take off, just blast it away. It's used as it sterilizes. Some people use it for sterilizing hospitals and commercial kitchens because it's so hot. The steam, it just evaporates right away. It doesn't leave a lot of water on the ground. I might be missing something. Anyone have any questions about this?
You said, for using it on say like a tombstone, my concern would be, let's say if you've got a white marble tombstone that's already starting to weather and the surface has gone kind of sugary, for lack of a better term. How would this affect, say, like a weathering tombstone already? Would it have any impact on the surface of it?
So we have done it on a weathered marble headstone and limestone monument as well at Victoria Lawn, actually. So we've used this on mortar, soft mortar that was about to peel off, and I've gone over this, taking off paint, and I was able to flick the mortar off with my finger, and this didn't touch the substrate at all. It didn't affect it at all. It didn't pit it. It didn't remove anything. I was impressed when we first did it, and when we got our machine earlier this year, I was blown away by that, actually.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Because it's so low pressure, right? You don't it'll clean it. We took the algae off of the marble monument and limestone monument at Victoria Lawn in minutes. And the grounds foreman at the time said this would have taken him 3 times as long or more and not come out with the same result.
And when you cleaned the marble tombstone off, did it because because it was cleaning the surface grime and stuff off, did it improve the legibility of the stone?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was pretty dark, like black and brown filled with algae, and we were able to you were able to see the engravings much clearer, especially the limestone one that we did too. I know I had sent James some photos of that as well, and it was night and day. I couldn't see the name or the year very well when the lady passed away and was born. It was night. It was night and day.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll circulate those photos, so that way everybody can see them, because it was pretty neat to see just how dramatic the change was. Luckily I got to stand there and watch Mark use this pretty neat tool, and you can see like on the photo on the left there, like he left like the black patch right underneath the window, but everything across the bottom of that window was basically looked like that, and that work was maybe done in a couple minutes at best. Like it was pretty dramatic how quickly he was able to clean it, and it was pretty impressive. And the other thing I thought was really impressive, Mark, was the amount of water that gets used in this versus a regular type of process, right? It's much less water is used in this case, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So no, it was pretty neat. It was a cool thing to see, and it's nice to know that we have somebody like Mark and like a product like this that's in our community, and we're able to if we do run into situations where a homeowner has a difficult kind of building that they're dealing with, we are able to put them in contact with people who can do work and make sure that it's done in a good way. So this was really cool. Thanks, Mark, for sharing with us.
And one more thing, graffiti as well, that helps, especially if it's fresh. This will take it off straight away on sensitive masonry, or anything really, and or if it's on a little longer, we have some products that we can brush into it, and the heat and low pressure help to remove the graffiti as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I have a motion to receive Mark's presentation? Andrew, thank you. And all in favor? Done. Downtown HCD update. James, take it away.
Yeah, so through the chair, I don't have a lot to a big update to provide for the most part. We're still waiting on a draft of the study. We had a meeting yesterday with our consultants to go over the initial kind of recommendations that they're going to put forward. Really interesting, and it was a really great conversation and discussion that we had about it. I fully anticipate that over the next month or so, I'll start getting. It's a very long study, and so I fully expect that I'll get little chunks as they kind of are ready to go, and I'll be able to review them. Once the study though is complete and we have a draft, it will be circulated to everybody here, and it'll be made public. So everybody here will be able to take a look at it and chime in on it. That hopefully will be done, or hopefully be ready for Christmas time. So it'll be some good Christmas reading for everybody. As Councillor Garcia mentioned, there's a lot of kind of pushback to the idea still. I mentioned last meeting that we aren't getting as much positive feedback, at least overt positive feedback. We know that there are people that support it, but they're not being as vocal as the people who don't support it. So we're still looking for kind of champions of the idea. Now, actually, I'm meeting with the Historical Society next week with Dennis and his group to talk about the project with them and make them aware of it, and see if they're able to help in that regard. And yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. And if anybody has any questions, oh, and the other thing I'll mention actually is our we had a second round of surveys to property owners and business owners in the downtown. It closed 1 minute ago. So we had upwards, I think, and it was 40 plus surveys that were filled out. So we'll see what the feedback was from that. But I think a lot of it was very organized around a particular group who don't like the idea of the downtown heritage district. So we'll see how that goes, but that'll all feed into essentially the report that will go to council early next year, probably in about February or March. And ultimately be up to council to decide whether or not to pursue a district plan. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks, James. Yeah, that was my one question was, if there's enough negative kickback, do you think council would still go ahead with, approving the HCD?
I don't know if I can answer that. Like it's all ultimately up to them, right? So I think we see the value in it. Clearly, I think that there's a lot of positive that can come out of it, but also, it's a community process, right? And so if there are community members that are opposed, then that's going to be taken into consideration. So I think we'll cross the road when we get to it, and we'll also see if more people kind of come out in support as they learn more about the project and learn about how significant the downtown is. One of the things that really came out from the conversation that Lauren and I had with our consultants yesterday was it is a really special downtown, and I don't have to tell all of you that. You all know that, right? So streets like St. Paul Street are really unique, and so there definitely is merit there that the downtown does warrant being a heritage district. It really is just a political process, to be honest with you, at that point. So the culture heritage value, though, is there, and I think our group definitely would agree with that. And so it's just kind of making our case to council that that they should feel the same way. So, but we'll cross the road when we get to it.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it boils back down to a communication issue. People, are having a knee-jerk reaction to something like this, and not fully understanding what the process is all about.
Yeah, and I think too, it's there are legitimate concerns, and there are things like financing and insurance, and and I completely understand at a time like this when people are concerned about the cost of everything. Those are legitimate concerns, right? And so we are taking that into consideration. And it's also is there a balance there though, right? So we have to figure that out. But ultimately, that's up to council to decide kind of what that is. I think what's really clear out of this though is that we have certain programs at the city that aren't being taken advantage of that could help downtown property owners and help them from a heritage perspective. Things like our facade improvement program. The city doesn't get a lot of applications for it currently. And so in my new role, I'm now partially in charge of the community improvement program, which is what our facade improvement program is run under. And so we're actually going to be looking at revamping that in the new year because we'll be reviewing our entire community improvement program. So it's a lot of figuring out, why aren't people applying? Is it enough? Are there enough funds there? Is the amount, so low that it's just not worth applying? Or, we'll kind of figure that out. But using that essentially as a way to say, if we, as part of being a heritage district, here's the give back, right? You can take advantage of some of these programs that will actually help your building. So we'll see if that helps, and we'll see if council is on board with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see some downtown business owners who have, actually improved their facades. The one building I'm thinking of in particular is where Walter's Jewelry used to be, and they've taken that 1970s funky metal cladding off the second floor and basically brought the building back to look the way it might have looked in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's in my opinion a big improvement.
Yeah, we definitely have some good stewards in our downtown. We have people who are who are taking care of their buildings and are putting work in. And you can see, I mean, we have the luxury of working downtown, where we often go for lunch and whatnot around there, and see all the new restaurants and stuff that are popping up. So people are definitely investing downtown. The real concern is you start the potential to lose buildings, right, is a big concern. It's not necessarily that people, about alterations and whatnot, like it's more so losing entire buildings. And especially if on St. Paul Street, you lose, if you lose 3 or 4 in a row, if you lose a swath to development or to, we've talked about fires today, that really puts a big hole in a major part of our downtown, right? So that's kind of my main concern. But I completely agree. There's people who are putting a lot of good money into their buildings, and the outcome is really nice. So no concerns there. It's nice to see for sure.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I have found that over the past few years, there's been people, sure, they're taking care of their buildings. It's removing the look of some of the downtown buildings. Like I know that there's one building that is on the right off of Ontario Street. There's like a women's clothing store, and that used to be brick when they put stucco all over it. I mean, it looks nice, but it changed what that building was. And I'm pretty sure that the building that has scaffolding up on it right now, beside Pony Mart, to the right of Pony Mart, I've heard that they're going to cover that brick and stone building with stucco as well. So these are the kind of things that we lose. We're losing the look of that old downtown. Little by little, there's something isn't put into place. It's that brick building is worth still restoring, but there's nothing telling them, nothing against it right now.
No, and that's true. And through the chair, the downtown, most of the downtown is just listed. We only have a very small handful of designated properties currently in the downtown. And so listing does allow them to make alterations like that without having to come to us for any sort of approval. So it's unfortunate that we don't have the ability to kind of push people in that direction, but or towards kind of making better choices for their buildings. The opposite is that you end up with, sometimes properties that are being, run down and not being taken care of, right? So it's finding that balance where you have people who want to invest in their building and want to take care of it, but maybe they just aren't making the right kind of the heritage, the heritage decision that we would have made, right? Because they might not appreciate, the brick like we would. So yeah.
The old Lincoln Theater building is case in point, Anyway, so if there's no further questions or comments for James, can I have a motion to receive his information about the HCD? John Crawley, you're making the motion?
Yep.
Okay, and all in favor? Okay, done. Item 7.8, or I guess item 9.1, sorry, the subcommittee update designations.
Yeah, this the chair. Just quick brief update on designation subcommittee. We met again, I guess after a little bit of a lull, got back together just to look at the status of the designation prioritization process, look at prioritizing and continuing with the research on the previously identified properties that have were identified as having being high up on the list. I provided a quick recap on the prioritization process and also updates on Bill 200, which extended the deadline for heritage designations to January 1st, 2027. So we actually have more time to address some of the properties that are on the register that will be removed in 2027. Give an update on 193 Vine Street, which James had done an evaluation for and determined it did not meet 906. And also talk about some of the ongoing research that the subcommittee was doing on the properties at 3 Elizabeth Street and 145 St. Paul Crescent. And we're going to keep on continuing with that research. The committee members working together to do the land use history and some of the field work of taking more recent photos, because some of our photos are a bit older for those properties. And then just talking about next steps and the goal is to evaluate, one high priority property per month until that 2027 deadline. So that doesn't mean necessarily that we'll be doing one designation a month, or even that, an evaluation will come to the committee every single month, but rather that we have the background research put together and have done the evaluation and have a conclusion for some of those properties. And we're talking about maybe putting those evaluations together and presenting them in groups every 3 or 4 months, so that the committee can take a look at the work that the designation subcommittee is doing. So the next meeting is scheduled for November 15th, and we're going to continue looking at those higher priority properties that we want to evaluate as soon as possible, and making sure there's always something kind of in the pipeline that we're putting together to evaluate and to designate. So I guess any questions or comments or concerns about that subcommittee?
No? Okay. So I guess we need a motion to receive the information from you. Mark, you're making the motion. Thank you. And all in favor? Okay. Gail, you had a thing you wanted to say about arts? You're on mute.
Gail, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, I don't use the city webpage at all. I get the Garden City Current regularly and Culture Inc. as well. And I did ask, and James was very helpful, about why the Heritage Advisory Committee never gets mentioned in anything in either of these things. Either the Garden City Current, and James explained that that's simply comes out of the council. And if heritage hasn't been mentioned, well, we don't get mentioned. But Culture Inc. sort of bothers me a bit because they came out with their award nominations this week, and I was delighted to see several of my friends up for various awards, and I was just thrilled and got in touch with the Culture Inc. people and said, how does one go about nominating? And they told me the answers to that. And the answer was that they were from the culture team. And I don't know who that is. It's communications again. Who makes up the culture team at City Hall? Heritage is certainly part of culture. It's part of the Ministry of Sports, Culture, and whatever. And we seem to be missing in action. And I don't know who, and I asked them who's on the culture team, and I haven't heard a response. The other thing is just watching today was rather interesting. I saw the name Anna Chung coming up. It's gone now, as a member of our SCHAC. May I ask who she is?
Oh, that was my mistake. I was just, I don't know who Anna is, but
Anna's the student.
Yeah. Oh, right. I of course,
Okay,
yes. That was my
because
mistake.
she's
Yeah,
gone
she's
now,
supposed
and
to
I'm
be
just
the.
thinking, we're not getting any,
Yep,
again,
that was my mistake. No,
communications needs to be addressed.
I think in this case, it's more me getting used to the team and getting used to the technical aspect of my role, and making sure that everyone is labeled correctly. I'm
Perfectly
very
understood then. Perfectly understood then.
I'm still getting used to this format of meeting and
yeah.
and how, so that is entirely my mistake. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So she is now a
student,
current student planner. Is that correct
Yes,
for
of
us?
course.
Yeah, okay. But more importantly, we are part of the city's culture, and we're just missing in action. I don't know how to address this other than to say what the POE committee, which Brian and Lorraine and I are currently the members of, have done all this outreach. I know I sent it to you, Lauren, and to James, all the work we did in the last years about culture things at the library, you name it, we did all these things, and we just seem to get missed somehow. How can we make this better?
Yeah, so through the chair, so our culture team is under our community recreation and cultural services, which is kind of separate from where Lauren and I are. So Lauren and I are within the planning department, and so we often work with people like Kathleen at the museum and as part of the culture team, but we have separate roles, right? And so ours is more from a planning perspective, and
Yeah, sure.
this committee though, because of the interests that are on this committee, it sometimes kind of bleeds into what the museum is responsible for, right? So that's why sometimes we bring Adrian out to our meetings to make sure that we're addressing those concerns. So as part of, I mean, we've been bringing Adrian out and we have conversations with Adrian quite a bit. That's kind of our efforts to bridge that gap, because we do acknowledge that, even though heritage is very much part of culture, we aren't physically, like, we aren't within that structure, right? So trying to build better relationships with the museum and with Adrian and with Kathleen, and I think we've made a lot of progress there, and having Adrian come to our meetings is kind of a good first step for that. But yeah, if that helps to explain where the culture kind of department sits.
It's mainly the museum then. It's not, you said communications and recreational?
Community, recreation, and culture. So it's
Community.
kind of like it's our parks and culture, and it's kind of a catch-all department a little bit. There's a bunch of different parts of the city that fall under there. So it's an awkward position for us because yeah, the heritage person is technically, a culture person, right? And it is hard to separate the two, but you have to have a structure in some way, right? And so us being part of, because we have a legislative requirement that's very much tied to the Planning Act and planning applications, we've always been situated under the planning department. So it really is more so just about keep building those relationships between us and Kathleen and Adrian.
Why doesn't the city say, Kathleen, Adrian Petty, they are part of the arts and culture team? Why don't they just say that? Why don't we know who on staff are part of this? It's, again, it seems we're just not recognized very well as a cultural entity or a cultural organization, and I desperately think we need to be.
No, that's fair, Gail, and Lauren and I will chat about that and see if there's more that we can do on our end. I think the efforts that we have been making, especially working with Adrian and Kathleen, I think is a departure from maybe what we were previously doing years and years ago. But they have their own mandate and also their workload and everything like that. And so
yes, and I get all the museum things, so I'm part of that as well. Just quickly, and then I know we have to go, it's the last minute thing, but the sign that was taken down from the corner of Carlisle and Queen outside the library, and then Adrian said, well, we're going to have a new sign. There's nothing there now. I see there's something attached to a pole just at the corner of the City Hall and James, attached to the pole. Is that the new thing about churches?
I don't know the sign that you're speaking to. So
Well,
what next time? But
right at the corner where the Watson statue almost was, only on the actual corner. It's on the whatever. And
yeah, so if it is the History Insight sign, then that is Adrian's project. But Adrian's coming to our next meeting, right, Lauren? If I'm not mistaken. So we can ask him directly, or I mean, Lauren and I can chat with him before that. But if you want a more direct answer about what's going on with the sign, then he's going to be here in a month. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
No problem.
Did we need a motion to receive Gail's information?
Sure. That would be good. Yep.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion to receive. So all in favor? Okay. We don't have any correspondence items, so the next meeting date will be November the 28th. I assume same bat time, same bat station. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Ooh, everybody put their hands up just about. I'll say Mr. Speck. And all in favor? Okay, so it's 4:51 according to my clock. So everyone have a great Halloween and don't eat too much candy if you don't have kids coming to the door.
Kids
That's
have
what I
already
always
come to
think.
my door and I've
Enjoy.
ignored them. The blinds drawn.
Bah humbug.
Well, I'm in the front of the house. You see, you people are probably safely away from little door knockers.
Anyway, have a great night, everybody.
Okay.
Great. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to talk. Yep.
Nice years, Lauren.
Thank you.